This is Brent from the Brookbush Institute, and in this video we're going to go over percussion or vibration release techniques using the Hypervolt from Hyperice for the TFL, TFL's nasty cousin, the Gluteus Minimus, and then we're also going to go over the Vastus Lateralis because the TFL and Vastus Lateralis have that fascial relationship via the iliotibial band. I'm going to have my friend Melissa come out. She's going to help me demonstrate. Now, if I'm doing release techniques, I'm assuming that we're doing this based on some sort of assessment, right? Based on an assessment, we want to calm down the activity of these muscles. So maybe Melissa has knees bow in, right? That would make these internal rotators tight. Maybe she has a hip extension restriction, or maybe I was doing goniometry and noticed that she doesn't have enough internal rotation. So overactivity of these muscles will change the arthrokinematics in the hip in such a way that you can't get into any further internal rotation, which means I'm going to use that assessment, do my technique, and then of course reassess with the same assessment and see if this was effective. Now, the position I want Melissa in is actually laying on her side. By laying on her side, I now have access to all these muscles. I can use the weight of the machine and good body mechanics rather than having to try to drive the tool in sideways into her leg. That's not going to work out very well. Now, one thing particular about doing these muscles is, as you may guess, using a percussion device on bone hurts really bad, right? We do have a lot of bone sticking out up here. We have the iliac crest, the ASIS, and we have the greater trochanter. So we need to use just a little bit of palpation skill here to try to make sure that when we're doing this technique and trying to get good releases, we don't just pound into bone, which is going to send Melissa flying off the table and maybe we don't get another chance to do this technique. Right? So if you guys just kind of feel at the top of the pelvis here, make note of the top of the pelvis, all right? So that's the iliac crest. I can then use this hand and maybe the space, the web space here between my thumb and forefinger, right? And I'm going to push down like this, and then if I keep palpating all the way around her iliac crest, I'll get to her ASIS. Okay, maybe I'll just put the top of my index finger there, right? So there we go. I now have this all nice and bordered out with my hand, which means when I use this tool, now all I have to do is not hit my hand and I won't hit her bone, and that works out pretty good. Now, with these devices, a little counterintuitive, we're going to start with this flat round piece. You could also use this larger round-ish foam piece that they have that comes with the Hypervolt. And we're just going to go over the muscle superficially, kind of gliding over all of the tissue. That tends to get a real nice toning down effect, right? Stimulating probably Ruffini endings and Pacinian corpuscles and using the vibration of this machine. Right, so when we do that, we're going to actually start on the higher settings, a little counterintuitive. Right, I'm going to place my hand, and again, I'm just going to kind of glide over the muscle. And my goal here is just to note any spots that I think are a little denser, any spots where maybe I actually see a twitch response. Right, a twitch response would be like I put I glide down to this portion of her TFL and I actually see like a little twitch in her muscle. Like I see the band of tissue kind of depressed real quick. Some of you guys might have seen that in other muscles after you work out, where you get one little twitch of a muscle fiber in like the shoulder or whatever. You might see some of that. If I see that, I want to note it. If I see Melissa grimace in a particular area, I might want to know that. Maybe that area is a little bit more tender. And the reason I'm keeping note of all these areas as I kind of slowly go through this tissue is maybe I want to come back a second pass with a different head on this Hypervolt and go a little deeper into the tissue. Now, some of you guys might be thinking, does this work better on skin or over clothes? Like, is this one of those situations where maybe I have Melissa with pants on here because this is video? Or is this something where even in clinic I would be doing this over clothes? And the truth of the matter is these vibration percussive devices actually work better over clothes. I know that sounds a little weird for my manual therapists, but your skin has a little bit of moisture in it, so these devices tend to get a little bit caught up on the skin. Something like yoga pants actually works really perfect because they're thin, but they're also smooth and slick, so you can just kind of move the tool over the tissue. Now you guys will notice that I moved my hand here from the iliac crest and ASIS, switched hands, and now I've placed my thumb over her greater trochanter. Right, so that's why I have my thumb here, is so that I just don't pound down into that bony protuberance, which is just gonna hurt and obviously not gonna help us with our release techniques at all. Of course, I can move from her TFL and gluteus minimus here, which is just all of this side area above her greater trochanter, and then I can start moving beyond her greater trochanter down the side of her thigh, which of course is her vastus lateralis, and tends to be very tender on people, so be careful. A couple little twitch responses there. Oh yeah, Melissa's grimacing a little bit. All right, so we know we have a couple spots right in this area here that maybe we want to go back to and do a second run a little deeper with a different attachment for the hypervolt. And you guys just notice I'm slowly gliding over the tissue, kind of trying to get everything to calm down. A little different than our foam rolling or our static manual release techniques. Kind of go back here and make sure I remember where I was. So up in here, we're a little denser. And then she had some trigger points in her gluteus minimus too, which is a little further back. All right, so I've done my pass through and I was in a little bit of a hurry. You guys might want to slow down just a little bit when you're doing this yourself, but I did my pass through on high intensity, right? So I did that on setting number 3. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this attachment out and I'm going to use one of the more pinpointed, smaller surface area attachments. So this is the bullet, which is what I'm going to use. You could also probably get away with using this piece. I know this piece is fairly popular as well. And now what I'm going to do is, rather than be on a high setting, I'm going to actually lower the frequency, but I'm going to be able to get deeper into the tissue that way. You guys will notice that if you put it on a really high frequency, it actually kicks you back out. Like the frequency itself will just kick you out of the tissue and you actually can't get deeper. And if you try to force it, it's just going to hurt. And so I'm going to put this on 1. And I noticed right here in her glute min, right? I'm actually going to switch this around. I'm going to kind of border her iliac crest so I don't get on top of that bone, because I'm definitely close to the top of her iliac crest here. I noticed she was real tender up in here. So we're getting a little deeper into the tissue. Notice a grimace. Now I'm going to slow down. I'm going to be a little bit more pinpointed and really slowly work through those denser fascicles. Try to get everything to release. Right. My manual therapists who are used to feeling through tissue and know the difference between kind of hypertonic and normal. You guys can use this hand and kind of strum those fibers, just like we would doing our static manual release techniques or trigger point release techniques, and see how you're doing as far as getting everything to reduce in tone. Oh, that's a spot. I do think the weight of the hypervolt is one of its big advantages. Notice I can use one hand to hold this thing, and it's not a struggle. It's not just because I'm a big guy or because I have large hands. Like, it's actually fairly lightweight. We also notice down here, right? Oh yeah, that's a little tender. All right, so you guys can help brace their leg a little bit. Just have them take deep breaths. You know, it's no different than foam rolling or any other manual technique you guys use. Like, sometimes it's really tender, sometimes it's fairly uncomfortable, sometimes people want to jump off the table a little bit. So helping them brace their leg is not necessarily a bad thing. That's definitely tender. All right, so you guys know I did my whole pass through here, and then I went to a lower setting with a smaller surface area to get deeper where I thought there was increased tonicity, maybe some trigger points, maybe some more tenderness or a twitch response that I needed to go back over. And then You guys noticed as I went through this technique, I bordered muscle, like bony protuberances with my hands to make sure I didn't go over them. So you could use this technique to brace the iliac crest and ASIS. Maybe you just place a thumb over the greater trochanter so that you go around the greater trochanter and not over it. And then of course you can use your hands when you need to brace a limb to help her stay stable if you really run into a tender spot. Guys, stay tuned for the close-up recap. Now for our close-up recap, guys, you guys will notice that I have my hand just outlining that iliac crest that we were talking about before, right? We don't want to put the hypervolt over the top of bone, right? And her ASIS is right here. So that's the most anterior portion of her iliac crest. I can put the tip of my index finger there, just kind of brace all the way around, and now I can just slowly go over the entire muscle on a higher setting. Right, stay up top, close to my hand. As I finish up all of this area here, I can then switch hands, find her greater trochanter, place my thumb there so that I can move around that tissue. And then of course as I go down the Vastus lateralis, I could switch my hand position so I'm actually bracing her leg so that I have a stable surface to glide through. Of course I'm taking note of any spots that I think are denser. Melissa lets me know is more tender, or I see one of those twitch responses and think that there might be a trigger point. Right, right there, we definitely found something. I don't know if you guys saw her whole leg twitch. That is not a twitch response, by the way. The whole leg twitching is not a twitch response, that's her trying to guard. All right, so I'm gonna turn this off real quick. Now that we're gonna say I've gone through the entire leg, I'm gonna switch to one of those smaller heads. So this was the flat round one that I really like. Now we're gonna go to this piece here. All right, I'm just gonna slide that right back in there. And now let's say we were going after that trigger point here. I can brace her leg a little bit. I'm gonna stay on a lower setting, right? So that's that one setting. And now I can get a little deeper into the tissue. And of course this is a close-up recap, so you can't see Melissa grimace right now. But I've definitely found a spot. And now I'm just gonna very slowly work my way through that little area of dense tissue. Of course, once I finish this one, I could come back and there was some area up here right next to her greater trochanter that I wanted to go through. This is probably the end of her tensor fasciae latae here. And then Melissa also had some stuff at her gluteus minimus. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought. Leave your comments below.